I did a little disclaimer here. What you're seeing here on the screen, this little layout is from Let Me DMB's Whip It Wednesday. Usually down below here, there's a chat and a bunch of people talking. But for today, we're just going to be focusing on making some drum and bass from scratch. So, with that said, what we've got to do is focus on making DMB from scratch using Ableton Live. So I'm in Live, whatever this one is, and really going to do basics. So upper left-hand side here, this is going to be where you're going to change your BPM. And for drum and bass, we're going to go ahead and up this to 174. And then basically, this is your main screen here, but if you hit the tab key, if you're going to use one monitor, you hit the tab key, it'll go to your playlist or your sequencer. There you go. And in your sequencer, you're always gonna see it start off with this. You got some MIDI channels, which you can't delete them all. But in this case, we'll delete a few and then we'll begin. And then you have your sequencer here, where you can drag and drop your files, your synthesizers, all that kind of stuff. If you want to move this loop, or this is what I always do, is I go to around 33, and this is where I begin my drop idea. This is where you can too. So if you want to loop this, you're going to go up here and hit this little loop. Click that. And now every time you play this here, this whole section will loop over and over. We're going to go ahead and first clear this up and just delete the MIDI by just clicking on the lane or the channel and hitting the backspace or delete key. And if you need to zoom, you hover over this area here, and you can actually see the magnifying glass and click and drag up and down to zoom in and out. In this case, we're just going to zoom in, so we're pretty much going to see the main first two bars here. On your left-hand side, you'll have your browser for all of your effects. Some effects that I think you should really get are things that I use. A Clipper, the Fabfilter suite, Duck or Shaper Box, and then some kind of a saturator. So aside from Saturn, which comes in the Fabfilter, I use Sausage Fattener and the Melder Production suite as well. And then for synthesizers, obviously Serum 2, Phase Plant, and then Massive or anything else that you want to use. Or in Ableton, there's a bunch of options, but I use a lot of VSTs to produce, so we're going to work with that. First, we're going to go ahead and go into your sample pack library. Find a sample pack that you like. I suggest getting something like the Culture Drum and Bass Production Suite. But we're going to open up a Teddy Killer's Patreon pack to get the basics of getting a loop beginning. So typically what I want to do is find something that I find interesting and work from there. So I like that loop. Let's go ahead and drag this, click and drag, and bring it to the audio 1, or in the empty space is fine too. In this case, we're going to put it to audio 1. And now you want to chop it. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this. Sounds really good and clean. But if you want to chop it, you can click on a spot here and you can hit Control E, and this will create a slice for you. So now this section here can be moved, or you can also click and drag over the section you want to keep or move or edit, and you can move that around like so. Control Z will always bring you a step back. But in this case, I want to loop this area here. So I'm going to delete all of this. I click, drag, and select, and hit backspace. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Command D to duplicate this section. And then for the extra that I don't need, I'll just click and drag and hit backspace. And you can always click and drag here to restart it. Click at the beginning of your loop and hit spacebar to listen to it. So in the original loop, he's got a different kick at the beginning versus the kick that hits here on this 8th note. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag just around that 8th note. Hold the Option key, or I believe on Windows is the Alt key. And I'm going to hold that down, click and drag that over. And it's going to just duplicate that sound. So now at the beginning, it sounds like this. So it's just a little bit more uniform. If you want to turn the volume down at all, you can. I would do that here by just clicking and dragging there. Or you can always hit Tab, go to your mixer here. And if you want to see more of your actual fader, you can go ahead and click and drag this down. But we're not going to do that here because, and if you need to go back and bring it back to 0, just double click on that. But we're not going to do that there. We're going to hit Tab to go back and bring the volume down in the channel just around 3 dB. Because I'm going to be using this as a backing layer to my main sound. So if you've got a nice kick pack, go ahead and find yourself a kick that you like. Go ahead and open up this pack here. I'm just going to get a subby style kick that's a little bit cleaner than what's here. If you could take a look at the waveform, there's a lot of distortion happening here. And kind of don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this little sample and put it over where the kicks are in the sample above. And for organization purposes, I'm going to click and drag these channels to wherever you want. I'm going to bring that up to the top. I'm going to find a snare from the same pack. And since we're not going to mess with the audio all that much, what you can do in Ableton is I'm going to load up a sampler. Let's go with all. You can click up here and type in sample and just load a sampler here. Sometimes it'll load it and the lane is collapsed. You can just click on this arrow to the right and open that up again. And your sampler is down here below. So now we're going to go back to the packs, find a snare I want. Like that snare, so I'm going to bring this down and just drag and drop there. In order for us to use that sample, we're going to go ahead and click and drag, because we don't need a whole bar of it. So we're going to click and drag for just 1/8 of a note. And you're going to hit Shift Command M to make a MIDI clip. And here, this track is in C3. The root of this note is in C3, so we're going to go ahead and just type that in. And now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing of In this case, if you want to do a little trick here, if you have a bunch of samples going on and you want to duplicate them, you can just click and drag even the empty spots, and then the section that you want to copy, and then hit Command D. Go ahead and click and drag this one and move it up here. And now we have our kick snare pattern. If we just want to hear just the kick and snare. And so the snare itself is a little low in volume. So if you want to look at your sampler or your VST or anything, just double click on the lane. And volume is set to 0. You can push that if you want to. So it looks like it loaded up at minus 10 dB. And in this case, if you look over here on this channel, you can actually see the volume go up and down. We're going to bring it back up to 10. It looks like 10 is hitting at that 0 peak. So that's my kick and snare, and then with my drums. And now we're going to go ahead and just find a hat loop. Or if you want to make a loop, you can. Let's see. In Ableton, they have drum samplers. You could use those to actually make yours, but in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just find a loop that I like from Culture Samples, Drum Bass, or Neurofunk Pack. If we can find one. Let's find some drum kits, full top loops. Some of their full top loops have snares, and I don't like that, but so we're just going to go ahead and grab some hats. I'm going to go ahead and I like this little one-shot ride. And drag that over, and then I'm going to hit Control. I'm going to select my first bar, hit Command D, it just copies it over. So now we have, and then I want something shorter. Like that has a little bit of nice reverb to it. It's super short and tight. So I'm going to take this and raise the gain. These little nodes here are actually the fader, the clip fader. So you can actually, it does default to add some fade to the beginning and end. The end is great because you sometimes you have samples that end at the wrong time. But in this case, it looks like it's all good. And then if it ends at the wrong time, you might hear a pop at the end of your sound. So you use this fader to get rid of that. Now we're good. Command D. This is what we got for the hats. Now, if you want to go ahead and get funky with it, you can actually right click and duplicate this entire channel. You got to be careful. So if you got a whole track that you're doing, you don't want to do this later on because then you have to do a lot of erasing. But if you plan ahead, you'll be able to use this little trick here of just duplicating this track. I'm going to go ahead and just offset this 1/16. So you can left and right click to move these around. And I'm going to take this volume and I'm going to bring this down. and now you hear more of a shuffle. So if you solo something here, you can do two solos by holding command and hearing two things at once. So here's both of the hats. And now if I want to, if I feel froggy enough, right, I can go ahead and take this MIDI clip and make it feel like more of a shaker than it does a hat. Bring the volume up just a bit, and then hit Command D and erase all those other ones. And actually cut this at the end. Very nice. So then grouping is a big deal, especially when it comes to these two sounds that are same, and I want to EQ them the same. I would hold shift, and click on whatever I want to group. In this case, it's these, and just hit Command G. And a good habit is to rename these by right-clicking and hitting rename, or do your little Command R. And we're going to name this one Shaking Hats. And a good trick is to make sure you EQ your sounds as you go. You can go with Fabfilter's EQ, or in this case, we're just going to use EQ8 from Ableton. If you want to add your effects, you click on the lane you want to add the effects to, click on the effect, click and drag it, or double click it while you're on that. But I usually just click and drag to make sure it goes to the right spot. Drop it, and now your Shaking Hats lane has the EQ. And if we solo this, now we'll have both of those hats in there under this, and you'll see them in the spectral analyzer here. And there's really no low end going on in this track, but maybe some harshness that will come later on when you start layering things. So we're going to bring down the EQ here, and that's fine. Slight little tips and tricks, and it's no big deal. Now with the drums, with the main drum loop, there's a lot of kick and snare thickness to it. So I want to go ahead and remove that stuff. Now, grab an EQ8, click on your first node, change this here to a high pass or a low cut. And then you can just go ahead and drag this over to wherever you want this to be removed from. So let's hear it. So it allows for some bleed of that 300 hertz range, but I'm taking out from 500 hertz and below. Now if we hear the kick and snare, let's hear it all together. So as we can hear, the snare itself on the loop is a little bit higher pitch. So we can actually click and drag this one up. A couple semitones or keys, and that'll make it so it's a little bit more in tune with the rest. So now we're going to go ahead and delete all those and Command D. Now, I like how all that sounds. Maybe this here is a little bit weak, so we can click and drag all of these. Click on the first one, click and drag them all again, and go ahead and just raise the gain. Very nice. So now we're going to go ahead and use, we're going to go ahead and group all of these. So we're going to select, click, hold shift, click on the first one, hold shift, and click to wherever you want to group. Then hit Command G, and we're going to name this one tops by hitting R and call this one tops. good rule of thumb is to add a clipper to mostly everything you do. You don't want things to be over clipped, but we're gonna go ahead and just clip this here. Click and drag, and I'm using free clip, which is free. So if I wanted to push that, I can. If I wanted to use something like M Saturator, which is great, it adds a lot of saturation, but I'm gonna put the threshold up to like negative, so it doesn't add too much. And we're gonna add the clipper to the end, and then for me, we're gonna sidechain the kick and snare. So first, let's keep things clean and rename things. So this is gonna be, let's rename this one to kick, and rename this one to snare. For the tops, we don't need to really cut or sidechain too much of the lows, but we will drop the kick out so we can bring more oomph to that kick. So just go ahead and find a duck or shaper box. You can even do this with the free Kilohearts compactor, but in duck, you can go ahead and leave this smooth to 0. Repeat, set this to side chain, and then you're going to. This is where you would always use your side chain inputs. Let's go ahead and choose a kick first, and we're going to select this little piece here to view our side chain coming through. So let's see it. So right now the side chain is cutting everything out. Sounds good. But don't want it to pump too much. So think of this here as a quarter of the bar. I like that. And now we're gonna copy this side chain by holding the Option key, clicking and dragging over, and simply, instead of like finding this thing again and loading it up again, we're gonna go ahead and select the snare. But in this case, we don't want hardly anything gone. So the transient of the snare, possibly, but I still want a lot of the song of the hi-hat to come through. So and that's okay. That sounds good. So now your clipper's holding it all in place, and then your sidechain is dipping it down. And that's really what you want. And then to clean everything up with our kick and snare, typically if you got layers, I would do groups for the layers of the kicks or the layers of the snares, but in this case we don't have to. And we're going to go ahead and just collapse the tops, click on the kick, hold shift, go down to tops, click the tops, and we're going to group this one. And we're going to click on the group, Command R to rename, and this one's drums. And then for the drum's sake, we're going to go ahead and add a clipper. Just take a look at it. It's not overly pushed. If you wanted to push it a little bit more, you could with a transient shaper. But in this case, we're going to leave it there. If you wanted to use some kind of compression, you can. But you can go ahead with SSLs. Oh, actually, if you go with Ableton's glue compressor, put that before your clipper there. You got slight compression happening at a ratio of 4. So I'm gonna leave that there. I'm gonna bring the attack possibly down to 0.3 and the release around the same. So just working a little bit faster, bring the threshold down. And you can see you're getting around, if you say this is 5 and this is 0, you're getting around 2.5 of reduction, and I would raise it around 2 or 2.5. And your drum just became slightly louder. So this is before, after. Slightly. And then you can do the same thing with your clipper as well. So if you got a clipper, you can look at it. And if you want to push it a little bit more, go ahead and drop it by like 1.5, 1.7 dB and bring this up by the same amount or around that amount. You can actually click in here and type it. You can do this in many other tools. Let's bring it to 1.4. Maybe we're getting a little bit too much distortion on the kick now. So let's go ahead and bring this back to 0.81 and drop this down to I like it. Okay, so our drums are good. Now I color coordinate everything. So drums we're going to be blue. So you can right click, change this to this color here, blue, and then assign, right click, and then assign track color to grouped tracks and clips. Now they're all blue. For me, it helps just keep things a little bit more organized, but it's not really necessary. So we're going to collapse this and get it out the way by clicking this little collapse button here. We're good there. Boom. Drums are done. Basic drums. All right, so let's go ahead and make a bass line. Let's go ahead and we're going to load up a synth. So let's go to synths, clear my search field here. I'm going to load a Serum 2. Now, if you're new to Serum, we're going to make a synth quickly, but if you got to find presets, you can here, and your packs or Serum 1 presets or factory presets here. There's some really good presets in there, and then your user installed presets will be here. In this case, we're just going to make one, a bass sound. I always drop my first oscillator down by 2. We're going F. That's what it sounds like there. I'm going to take the randomization off. And then I'm going to make a bass sound. So I got my randomization off. I add another oscillator. Take your fine, go down and go up on the other, and now you got. Actually, I forgot to bring this one down. So both oscillators at -2. Basic Reese. So we're going to work off that basic Reese and maybe add some more. So let's see. Add a sub. And then this here I'll set to filter 1. This is going to main. So filter 1, and we will do a high pass or a band pass. And now we're going to do some LFO to this here. And maybe just. And that's just a basic bass sound. So now we've got a bass sound made. We're gonna go ahead and click in here, and we're gonna draw in a bass line. So click and drag, Shift Command M to make your clip. Close this to get out the way. Find where our key is in. And you're just gonna double click, and you can drag this as long as you want your bass line to be. And in this case, it's an F. But I'm gonna go ahead and pitch it down at the end. Actually, you know what I'll do? I won't pitch it down that way. I'll continue this to the end. I'll click on this MPE. I forget what this means, but it is for your pitch envelope. And we're gonna have and pitch this down one key. And if we listen to the bass all by itself. If you want this curve to be a little bit better, you would hold the Option key to make a nice curve. And in this case, I just want to bring this down maybe one more. And then now if you want to get some kind of distortion, maybe you can use Rift on this. You have Rift. Rift is a really good distortion unit. I'm just going to add it after the fact, and I'm just going to choose a random preset. Leave that the way it is, but I'm going to grab an EQ now, and everything from here on out is like to taste. But I do want to remove the mud. Not like that sub. But I'm going to take the high end out because we don't really need that. Now, once you got your bass, I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this bass. And instead of, I'm going to find a preset in here from one of my packs. Let's go with March. And I'm going to double click in this Midi clip. Drag that over, go back to notes, and put that there. The bass sounds okay. Something like roar to bring this out slightly more. That doesn't sound too bad. It's a little clowny, but whatever. You got your idea. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll slow this down. All right, so now we got something a little bit slower. So we're gonna go ahead and just take these two and group them. I'm gonna add a clipper to this one. And this is basic stuff. Obviously, you would have to do some more EQing and all that. But duck is a big deal here. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and click on the duck from tops here. And we've already got your side chains set up for kick and snare. So why not go ahead and click this one, shift and hold, click the second duck, hold option, and copy it to the bass group. We're going to rename the group basses to bass. And now our kick and snare are already there, and you can hear them when you solo the bass group. But now you can hear that the kick is kind of like dipping it down slightly. And you can see it here too. So that works. So now we're going to go ahead and actually just listen to the whole thing together and solo that one. And that's like a basic idea. Let's go ahead and I would actually maybe change the bass sound and go with something I've made before. Let's go with Chugga-Funga. The distortion's a little high in this one, so. Not sold on the pitch here, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave that alone. All right, cool. That kind of works. So let's maybe. So we've got that bass. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this, change that first bass to something else randomly. And then, so once you got like your little idea going, you got your drums, your bass. Again, this is basics. So you've got 2 bars that you kind of okay with. I'm gonna change my color of my bass to red, which is what I always do. It's always got to be hot. You can click and drag on everything you want and just duplicate it, and now you got yourself a little 16-bar shebangle, right? Or is this 8 bars? So it's a little 8-bar shebangle here. So, and if you want to, go ahead and just edit. Maybe you like this sound or you don't. But if you want to change it, you can hit Control Command D, delete the ones that you don't want, so you get some variation. Go into your clip and then edit it somehow. Or you can, let's go ahead and just do something else. We're gonna go ahead and bounce this. So let's take a step back, delete that, copy this over, and copy that over, and we're gonna bounce this audio by hitting Command B. And there's your audio bounced. And then if you want to raise the volume of this, you can. And you can also now stretch it. So we're gonna go ahead and stretch this here by holding Shift, hitting stretch, and then we're going to cut that end. So all that did there was make it a little bit more of a longer, but pretty much the same sound. And there, since I removed it and I changed the where is it? The warp style to texture, it actually kind of changed the sound. And we can pitch it up, maybe 370. Then this one here, I can go ahead and take this one, and I'm going to reverse this clip by, you can just type R. And very nice, very clean, not too much going on. And then you'll do effects and you'll do all that kind of stuff, but to get this going, let's look at the master out. Change this back to 0. And a couple things you need for your mastering channel for analyzing. You need Boolean, loudness meter, and you'll need like something like span, or preferably you'll need preferably span or Vision 4X, which is a beast. I've got my preset for pre-master on Vision 4X. I like to take a look at the sound like this. So right now, going into the master, I'm clipping. So what I'd want to do is actually probably look at a clipper of some sort. It's right here. And if you want to push it, you can. But you don't really have to if you don't want to. But this way, you've got yourself a pretty basic master. One thing that you can also do to make the sound a little alive is grab Ozone. Ozone 11 is great. We'll do it before the clipper. Well, let's do it after. All right, we're going to go ahead and just add an imager. Change our settings here to crossover type digital. Bring this down to around 2. Hit OK. I'm just going to load up 4 channels. I'm going to mono the bass. add some stereo to the low end, add some stereo to the mids, and add a lot of stereo to the highs. Very nice. And now I'm going to go ahead and find a clipper or a limiter like Pro L2. This is from the Fabfilter set. Go to Pro L2. Put that at the very end of my chain. I like this preset here, which is called from the loud settings, practically clipping. Turn my true peak limiting off. My channel linking is off. Samplings are off. I think that's all I'll need to do in this point. That's without doing much. I mean, there's some EQing that needs to be done. I can hear it in the high ends, and the snare probably can come out a little bit more. And I would do that by maybe just even adding a transient shaper. Oh, but before the transient shaper, I'll add a Fabfilter Saturn. And in Saturn, I just want to bring the top end out of that snare. So the low end I'll turn off, and the top end we'll saturate it with some gentle saturation. And I'll bring the level up a little bit. I'm going to take a look at that EQ. Make sure I don't have too much going on. I do have a lot going on in the low end of this one, so I'm going to cut that. I'm going to cut it pretty sharp, though, with the 4X. And so that's your basics of creating a drop. Slight mastering, nothing crazy. Just clipping, a little bit of saturation here and there. Nothing crazy on this one, but you got yourself a little drop. And so if you want to change like the feeling of the track, definitely just use a different bass sound. This is my bass criteria, so let's go back to you might notice things as you hear it that like something like this is a little bit too loud. And some things you want to do, like when you're working on this, is take a look and see how it's going to sound in mono. So let's grab a utility is also your friend here, and bring utility to the end of your chain, and just set this to mono, and just hear it. And your goal is to not lose any of the idea of the track, because if it's played in a mono setting, you don't want it to lose any of like the the feel of the track. If there's something too far to the wide, too far to the left, too far to the right, then you're gonna have an issue. But in this case, it sounds good. And if you want to be safe and you want to mono the bass a little bit more, you can around 100 hertz. And bring this out. Take a look at your Julian and your. I like to look at the limiter as well. And now you're hitting at a minus 3.5. You can push it much more by simply looking at your Pro L2. And let's actually listen to the delta of what it's doing. So right now it sounds like anything that's crunching like that is what's being removed from the track. So maybe in order to get it a little bit louder, I go into my clipper. And it does sound a little bit crunchier, but I did get it to minus 2.7. So maybe I would dial that back slightly to like a 0.5 and bring this down to like that. If you find like your kick ain't right, then you got to change the kick. If you find your snare ain't right, change the snare. Just make everything kind of fit together. There are more tricks that you can do, simple things like side chaining. Like for example, maybe in this case, I would want to side chain using Pro Q3 or Pro Q4. I would click and drag that to before my main duck. I would choose my side chain. This is for my tops, from my snare. And I want to look and see where my snare is hitting on my tops. And maybe I want to do like a little bit more of a dip here. So I'll click on this node. I'll click and drag this down below. And then I will choose this from the sidechain here. And now you're bringing the dip down there in that frequency. And then maybe around here, I want to dip it down so it brings more of that oomph of the snare out, or just slightly more. So I'll go ahead and take this, and I will make this slightly wider and dip this down like so. And choose sidechain here. So now it's only sidechaining that portion of the song. It'll assist in removing phasing issues. Let's actually bring the shelf up a little bit more. It'll assist in killing some of the phasing issues in that frequency range. And if you want to get froggy, you can use the spectral button here to just dip out the frequencies that are being hit, and use your threshold as well. See, like that's a little bit too much. Maybe we do attack and release kind of quicker. So it's a very slight and very minute detail, but it'll definitely help you along with some other things. But yeah, we just made a little drop and it was kind of good. Maybe I'll work on this and make it into a track. But for now, this one, we're going to go ahead and hit file, save as, save life set as. We'll name this one diode. extensions. A nice little roller. Yeah. Yeah. So this was your boy, Super Daddy Diode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you heard everything correctly, and that everything was nice and clear, and you learned a little bit. I'm a little sick, a little under the weather, but check this out, and much more to come. Peace.